Thank you to Candace for the question in the group about giving medications during holidays, or we could even further extend that to weekends. So it's a really good question is, do children with ADHD need to take their medication all the time, 7 days a week? And I think I'd divide this up into a number of different approaches. When we start off diagnosing ADHD and we're testing and we're trialing medication, it's always a good thing to give it all the time so that we get a consistent picture, so that parents also are able to observe the effects of the medication at weekends. Because children are often given the medication during school time and then don't see the consequence of the medicine at the weekends. Only today, I spoke to some parents and I asked them, well, what do you think about the medication? How does it actually affect your child? And they said, well, I don't know. I only give it during the week and I've got no idea how that medicine affects my child, because by the time they get home, it's worn off and we don't give it at the weekends. So I felt that a bit strange. And, you need to know as a parent how the medication is affecting your child. And that's important information for me as the doctor prescribing the medicine. So in the first couple of months when we're trialing the medication, very important to get a true reflection. Because remember, the teacher will see your child in a class of a lot of children, and there's some subtle signs that might not be picked up. Sometimes a little bit of social blunting, there might be a little bit kind of, reserved, they might be a little bit anxious. There might be subtle things that you will not pick up as a teacher in the class. And of course, when they're at home, you will notice those things. Things like appetite, of course, those are things you can monitor whether at school or at home. So those are important pieces of information to also guide how much medication your child needs. In a classroom, the academic demands are different. At home, they're different. And then, of course, there are children that are on long-term medication, and it all then depends on the side effects of the medicine. If your child is lucky enough to be one of the 85 out of 100 that do not display any side effects, then it is better to give the medication consistently. Because remember, that medication releases dopamine into the front part of the brain, the frontal cortex, and it bathes the frontal cortex in medication, helps stimulate the brain in its maturing process. And that would be the ideal situation. There are some children that are highly impulsive. They are actually a danger to themselves and other people around them. They do crazy things. They jump off buildings and they jump off walls. They climb up trees and try to be Spider-Man. And, Buzz Lightyear, as Buzz Lightyear said, flying is falling with style, not too much style. You don't want them to break their head. That's why children with ADHD visit the emergency room more often than other kids. They knock themselves, they have sutures, they have stitches. So, if you have a child that's very impulsive, then you I think, realize intuitively you need to give that medicine all the time. And then there are those children that have a lot of side effects of the medication. And unfortunately, they are one of the 15% that tend to have a lot of side effects. And as a doctor, we've got to balance that. The benefit to the medicine versus the side effects. We don't want to do any harm, yet we want to help. And that is a balance. So if your child doesn't eat well, if your child tends to have meltdowns after the medicine wears off, we can always adjust those things. But once you've adjusted things and, your child is so sensitive to the medicine. I've got some of my patients that literally they are on 1/4 of a 10 milligram tablet, literally a whiff of it. As I say to my patients, it's like such a little bit of medication. It's like walking past a bakery and smelling the bread. It is a little whiff. And yet that's enough to cause a lot of side effects. And in that case, you've really got to balance and sometimes just tolerate giving the medicine while they're at school, or as a top-up dose when they're doing homework. Well, the whole of the nation is on holiday at the moment, so it's a really good question. Should we be giving this medication during the lockdown period or even extended period of holidays? And I think it really depends on the parents. So answer to Candace. Candace, I think, you are so fortunate to be on a farm. I think all of us are sitting there dreaming about being on your farm. and being able to have our kids, enjoy the wonderful South African lifestyle. Lots of vitamin D. But more importantly, one of the most important sources of dopamine, which is the same chemical that your brain releases for self-control, the same chemical that the medication stimulants release. Exercise, being out, engaged, that releases adrenaline, but not only that, releases dopamine. So by exercising, they're actually self-medicating themselves. By keeping your child active, milking cows, motorbikes, as long as they're safe, you're actually treating them. You're self-medicating. You're actually kind of engaging your child. Exercise, outside, busyness. And those kids that can't go outside and busy, creativity is another source of natural dopamine. Engaging in something you're interested in, that motivates you. They can be crafts, arts, indoor things that kids are good at. Sometimes kids are not really physical and good at outdoor activities, but they're excellent at doing, whether it's on a computer or crafts, arts. That motivates, and that also releases dopamine. So that's a creative outlet. What we don't want to do during the lockdown is that we found with the first lockdown, we don't want anybody to get a lockdown belly, but put on weight. And that is indoors. One of the other things that tends to release dopamine that makes kids feel good is sugar. Ice cream, candy, hits, sugary drinks. Be very careful. It makes them feel good. But the consequence of that is not so good. So I think the question about giving medication, ideally, if your child is somebody who's highly impulsive, who needs regulation of the emotions, that requires that, longer acting medication to help control those symptoms, those impulsive symptoms of ADHD and those emotional impulsivities, that would be good to give. But if your child's got lots of side effects, you've got to kind of give it when they need it. Or otherwise, as Candace has done, is substitute the medication but replace it with something that is engaging, that keeps exercise, that gives your child that engaged and is actually self-medicating in that way. So I hope that helps. And please give your own experiences, how you give your child entertainment and how you keep your child busy. And I'll be very interested, parents at home. I've had parents now at the moment, they're at home, they've got to look after kids as well as try and work. One of the parents said to me today they were on some Zoom call and they're trying to work and the child's pulling their headphones off and jumping in front. So I think it's going to be an interesting time over the next 3-4 weeks, maybe longer. Please give us your feedback. Thanks.